Hello and welcome to this episode of Startup Central. I'm Nayantara. This is the only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated, of course, to, as the name suggests, startups, innovation, technology, disruption, entrepreneurship. If it falls under the gambit of the new economy, it's going to be here on your favorite channel, ET Now, every weekday at sharp 6 p.m. Gaming. Before the pandemic, we had seen Mukesh Ambani and Microsoft's global chief Satya Nadella on the same stage talk about how gaming can become the biggest thing in India, maybe even bigger than commerce and music. Today, we've got a really special conversation for you. It is with Rajan Anandan of Sequoia Capital, as well as a BCG partner, Vikash Jain. We're getting them here because they've authored a report about the opportunities that exist as far as gaming in India goes. Gentlemen, welcome to ET Now. Thanks so much for joining us. There's so much to talk about. Ever since China called e-gaming a spiritual opium, the belief has been that it's all going to mean advantage India. But in India, we have our own issues where we have at least as many as 4 states in the south that are against gaming. I'll get to that in just a bit, but let's get the conversation going. And I'll begin with you, Rajan. Why are you so excited by gaming?
So, Nayantara, thanks for having us. Very exciting day today. We published the very comprehensive report on online gaming, as you just said, partnership between BCG and Sequoia Capital India. As you know, the internet has come of age, Nayantara, right? We have 600 million connected users. We have the highest data consumption on the planet for any given user, and India's come of age, when it comes to gaming. And Vikash will talk about the stats, but basically 300 million Indians are gaming very actively today. And, much like everything else in India, though, until recently, the big question was, where is the money? Where is the revenue? Where is the business in gaming, right? And I think the reason we embarked on this research between BCG and Sequoia was we wanted to deeply understand how big is the online gaming market from a revenue standpoint, how many users are really playing and what are some of the user dynamics. And I think the net of that is, look, it's already sizable, right? It's gone from virtually nothing a few years ago to about $1.8 billion industry today in terms of revenues, gaming revenues for gaming publishers and platforms. And that by 2025. So but all that being said, we're still at 1.8 billion, only 1% of the global gaming revenues, right? So today we have a large number of user base. We have monetization that's begun to happen, and we think it's only going to accelerate from here. So this is a very large opportunity for obviously consumers. We have 300 million of our peers in India that are actually gaming every single day, but it's also a massive opportunity for entrepreneurs to build very exciting companies.
Okay, thanks for setting the foundation. So with that, I'll go to Vikash. Rajan has very nicely thrown the ball in your court, saying you're going to take me through the stats. So I'll begin with that. A sunrise sector, Rajan said, about $1.8 billion, a $5 billion opportunity in the near.
And the stats laid out by Rajan kind of talk to that. It's a very large user base, pretty much the second largest gaming market from a number of users perspective right now globally, right? Just trailing China. And there is enough and more monetization happening, ads, paid users, and of course, there are other forms of monetization underway. There is a very high level of engagement and adoption on a daily basis, right? And look, if you step back and think what's going on in India, the numbers just come together. We have, a market which the internet has just, we talk about availability of internet connectivity. It's just gone through the roof, and we all know that. It's becoming cheaper, it's becoming faster, and Rajan mentioned highest data consumption. A number of games continue to proliferate, and what you're beginning to see is more and more games beginning to get the Indian flavor, and you see some of them becoming big users or big adopted games like Ludo, etc. These are closer to all of us growing up, so it's beginning to get closer to home in terms of affinity to Indians. And obviously there's been a push, from across the stakeholders and players to drive the adoption. Last, I think what's also happened, and this is where the data started to see, gaming was already spiking and growing very rapidly pre-COVID. We were seeing 35% plus growth in the market before that. And I think COVID has just deepened that adoption. It solidified, it just made for many a habit. And there are some interesting trends we are picking up about the gaming, which we can talk to subsequently. But just in terms of what's going on, so as we start to put the numbers together along with the trends, the size of the market start to come home quite nicely for us. It is still small, 300 million compared to 1.8 billion. The per user revenue, if you were to say the per user market is still small. So the headroom continues to be very large. And as engagement and traction continues to happen on gaming, we just believe the upsides are pretty significant.
Yeah, I think, Nayantara, the only thing I'll add is, 1.8 billion these days in the Indian startup ecosystem seems like a small number, except keep in mind, this is very high margin revenue. Okay, so Freshworks, which went public, as you know, at about over $400 million of revenue, is valued at over $10 billion, right? This is revenue that has margins that is higher than SaaS. So $1.8 billion with very high margins actually translates to a very, it's just a massive multiple, right? I mean, you can just look at the multiples. You're looking at, 40, 50, 60 billion dollars of potential market cap that is tied up in this 1.8 billion. So, you look at sort of 40 billion of e-commerce, but keep in mind the e-commerce take rates for our e-commerce platforms, depending on the category, it could be 5% to maybe up to about 20%, right? So even in a 40 billion GMV e-commerce market, the take rates could be, $3, $4, $5 billion. So this is why I tell our founders, Nayantara, that revenue is not revenue is not revenue. When it's real revenue and it's very high margins, it gets to be superbly interesting. And at 1.8 billion with very high margins, that's a superbly interesting number. I just thought I'd put that in context because in India today, you look at 1.8 billion and say, what's so big about it? Well, when it's very, very high margin, it's a really big deal.
Is that why, Rajan, you think that gaming is going to be the next frontier for investors? Is gaming e-commerce the next SaaS?
Yeah, I think, look, in India, Nayantara, as you and I have chatted, lots of sectors are going to be 10x, if not 100x bigger than where we are today, right? Because we are still at $2,000 per capita as a nation. And the best is yet to come in just, pretty much every single sector. Now, in terms of gaming, though, it is going to become, 10x and then over time 100x much more interesting because, you have 300 million users. And as you'll see in the research, the revenue per user is a fraction of what it is, let's say, in a market like China or India, right? And over the next decade, you'll see that gap close up. Just to give you a sense, right? The gaming revenues in the US, the gaming market industry, is about over $40 billion in China. In India, it's 1.8 billion, right? So it's 20 times higher, 25 times higher in China. So this is really 5 billion is just a marker along the way, right? 2025 is 4 years from now. So that's why we think that, but what's important is that the inflection has started, right? This was a market from a monetization standpoint that hadn't inflected for a while. Just to give you a sense, Nayantara, exactly 10 years ago, right? 2011, when I joined Google, the entire gaming market in India was less than $50 million. So today it's 1.8 billion. Right, so and it's going to 5 billion, right? So that gives you a sense of the kind of trajectory, and the monetization is the reason that you're seeing a lot of investor interest, right? So not 50% of all funding that has gone into Indian gaming companies and gaming platforms actually came in the first quarter of this year, right? So investor appetite is just picking up, and you'll see that increasing significantly over a period of time because now investors and founders are actually seeing monetization happen.
And if I may just add maybe just a quick point on that. If you just step back and think about this, we are a mobile-first country, very significant mobile consumption, and a big use case of mobile consumption is media. And if you look at media content consumption, the two things which are just taking off at very high clip rates are just gaming and OTT. And that's just the way India will entertain itself in some ways, right? It's going to be mobile-led. And gaming and OTT are just two big vectors of that growth and how India will consume. And as more consumption happens, and more engagement happens, we're just seeing to what, the $3 to $5 per revenue per user is significantly lower compared to some of the other emerging market as well. And that will climb up, and that's where the growth is going to come from. And of course, there's a huge number of users which are on mobile consuming data, but yet to consume gaming. We said 300 million, the number of data consuming mobile users is much larger, as we all know that, right? That number is over 500 million. So the penetration of gaming in the mobile world is still lower, not fully there. That expands gaming consumption, and behind that will follow monetization.
And Vikash, how exactly is this monetization taking place? And I just want to ask one question. When we're talking about gaming and you're talking about mobile first and all the numbers you're throwing it as 1.8 billion with high margin, which is going to become 5 billion. This is for all kind of mobile gaming, right? Or is this outside of real money gaming?
India story, but it also includes very high level of paid subscription. Quarter of the market is there, and a quarter of the market is about really ads, which continues to be a big part of revenue source. But yes, this is the total market, including the real money gaming as well.
So Rajan, so most of the monetization therefore is happening through advertisements. That's what Vikash is saying. Can you tell us globally how does monetization really take place? Because it'll also give us an idea of how we are lagging.
No, actually, Vikash, you should correct me if I'm wrong, but advertising is only about 25%, or maybe even less, right, Vikash? It's about 25%.
Correct.
So Vikash, why don't you just walk through the 1.8 billion?
So I think the breakup is about half of that is real money gaming. The remaining half is split between advertising, which is about 20% of the overall market, and about 30% is the in-app purchases and subscription, which comes. So it's a full set of monetization mechanism that's out at play. As we look forward, I think advertisements will go up. India has disproportionately higher RMG share compared to other markets. The others will, increase in share as well as we grow up. But I think the way to think about this is, across all of this, the overall monetization is a very small number. It's low single digit dollar per user, or per gamer per year, right? And even if you just convert this into per paying subscriber, that number still is small compared to even emerging markets, as I said. So I think the headroom of what can be done with just all these three channels of monetization, whether it's real money gaming, advertising, as well as in-app purchases and subscription, just the headroom is very high. So all of them will grow, as a market, just because we still talking $3 to $5 per person per gamer right now.
So you were waiting for that, as you said, there's a lot of headroom to grow. We're lagging behind. And as we do that, Rajan, I want to ask you one question, which is that, okay, I understand why gaming is the next frontier. I understand why you're all enthused about it, the high margins, that this can be the next fintech, can be the next e-commerce, all of that. I get that. But investors love policy certainty. You don't have that with e-gaming, Rajan.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Nayantara. Look, I mean, if you look around the world, not just in India, but right, look at every single country around the world. Innovation, is led by consumers, right? And consumer-led innovation always is ahead of regulation, right? You can look at all the frontiers on innovation today, right? Be it Web3, be it crypto, be it online gaming, pick your favorite one that you like, right? I mean, consumer innovation, consumers and the innovation that consumers drive is always ahead of regulation. And I think here again, what we're seeing is here innovation is very, very far ahead of where the regulation is, right? And I think that's really what's happening. Our view is that, look, at the end of the day, we do think, India, much like, every other country, will come up with a regulatory framework that works for consumers. So at the end of the day, what's most important is, you want to protect consumers, right? And second, you also want to make sure that, you encourage innovation so that more and more innovators can actually innovate for consumers. And if you look at, you rightly pointed out at the beginning of the show that there were 4 states that had imposed bans. Keep in mind that of the 4 states, Nayantara, as you know, 2 of them have been overruled in the courts, right? So the courts have said that this is actually, courts have overruled the rulings, right? So we do think that, in India too, right, we will see over time as the understanding of what one part of gaming is, right? By the way, keep in mind, we're talking about one specific aspect of gaming, which is the one that has regulatory uncertainty. I mean, if you look at, in-app purchases driven games or mobile games where, that are monetized through advertising, there's absolutely no concern at all. And that's a fully, 20-30% of the market, as Vikash was just mentioning. So I think that is going to happen, right? You can sort of say, why is there so much excitement about Web3 investments globally? Because there's so much regulatory uncertainty all around the world, right? We are looking forward to hearing what the Indian government has decided in a month or two here. But this is the today, actually, after fintech, the highest funded venture funded sector globally, right, is Web3. And why is this happening? Because again, I think investors understand that, this is sort of, we're at the frontier of innovation. And I actually wanted to add one more thing, right? I don't know, Nayantara, whether you remember, Honorable Prime Minister of India has actually talked about the fact that gaming, India is really going to be betting really, really big on gaming, and he encouraged all stakeholders to do everything that we can to actually encourage, embrace, and foster this gaming, tidal wave that India is seeing right now. So coming right from the Honorable Prime Minister, that India should embrace gaming, right? So we think that this will, we do believe that this will get sorted over a period of time. It will probably be a state by state sort of thing that happened, but that's what you're seeing, right? Look, at the end of the day, Nayantara, what's very, very important is you don't want to bet against the Indian consumer. If 300 million Indians are gaming today, and that number is going to go to 500 million, and then it's going to go to 1 billion. As an investor, what you don't want to do is you don't want to bet against that, right? And especially when the regulatory landscape is evolving. So we're very confident. Look, India, as you know, has been extremely progressive on reforms, on regulations that have impacted technology, and we're confident that over the next months and years to come, this will also fall in place.
And then I'll just add a very interesting insight that came through the consumer research that we did as a part of this. Gaming is not considered a waste of time. It's telling about how the Indian consumers are responding to gaming. If you go back some years ago, it would have been, why are you wasting your time? But it actually isn't. We asked consumers why game, and there were many options given, but it claimed very clearly that people are seeing things at gaming, including building digital skills, including building dexterity, all of the other reasons. It was not definitely considered a waste of time, which was very interesting insight, which is just beginning to show how consumers are looking at this space from a media and consumption and entertainment perspective, sitting very squarely in the middle of the entertainment basket right now, and it's here to stay.
Where were you both when I would get grounded and scolded for playing too much Mario Brothers in school? I wish you both had a conversation with my mom. But jokes aside, the spiritual opium conversation that we've been hearing, the rhetoric that's been coming out of China is being seen as, is this going to be advantage India? Rajan, has that happened?
Look, I think, while I was at Google, Nayantara, I'd get this question of, who's the Google of India, right? When are we going to have our own Play Store? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's very interesting, Nayantara, is MPL is going to be the MPL of the world. Dream 11 is already the Dream 11 of the world, right? When it comes to cricket and fantasy games, when it comes to mobile games, the way that MPL is sort of playing it, right? MPL is launched in the US and it's off to gigafast start, right? Gigafast, not megafast, gigafast, right? So I think, look, and I think this is why also regulators should really think about this very seriously, right? Not only at the state level but also at the center level, because we have an extraordinary opportunity to not just innovate for the 600 million Indian internet users that's quickly running up to 1 billion internet users, but really for the 4.5 billion internet users around the world. Okay, so you can take out the 900 million in China, but for everybody else, right? So which is over 3 billion users. So this is a very, very interesting opportunity, Nayantara, not just for not just for the Indian market, but to actually build from India and build for the world. And we are seeing the path being shown by companies like Dream11, companies like MPL, because these are unique business models, Nayantara, right? These are not business models that exist in many other markets around the world, right? So we should absolutely look. I don't think it's necessarily caused by what's happening in China, right? Because our entrepreneurs are not. They don't do something just because something is happening in China or not. They first build products that inspire, motivate, excite, and bring joy to Indian consumers. But what they're finding now that those same set of innovations are beginning to work in other markets, right? Which is really, really interesting.
And Rajan, would your advice then be to the startups, the founders that are looking at gaming, to maybe not just build another rummy app, another poker app, another bridge app? I mean, that would be really obvious, but then what are the opportunities that exist?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to read the report. It's a very comprehensive report, Nayantara, and it talks about 5 user personas, and it talks about some really, really interesting insights of what is it that you need to be thinking about as you're actually building games, especially for the Indian users, right? I do think, look, firstly, it's important to say, who are you building for, right? There are 5 user personas. Vikash can, talk about those at length, right? So firstly, say, who are you building for, right? Secondly, you've got to say, what kind of genre are you focusing on today, right? So today in India, sort of multiplayer games, are being very, very successful, right? And there's a whole set of, we've outlined, very clearly in the report as to why that is, right? Building interactivity and social interactions into your games becomes very, very important, right? So building things like chat and building interactivity is super, super important. So I would say, look, there's a whole set of things that you've got to do. Like, for instance, Ludo King, right, is like a massively successful game. I mean, Ludo, right, that's a game that all of us sort of grew up playing, but they brought some serious innovations into it. So we would say, look, it's not just about not doing the kinds of, not working on the kind of games that you've talked about, Nayantara. Those can also be reimagined, right? Fundamentally, it's a great opportunity to reimagine, locally relevant games that, tens, if not 50 or 100 million Indians love to play, like Ludo King and others, but also an opportunity to really build fundamentally new multiplayer type games for one or more of these Indian audiences.
Yeah, and I just want to build on that. I think Rajan touched upon a couple of things, Nayantara, which are very important. I think just understanding the...
But taking forward that point, Vikash, and I want to build on what Rajan said. I mean, you should know your audience, and what is also part of your report is that gaming in India is not popular in any one particular demographic. You're also, so you're trying to make a case that it's, for all age groups. You're also making a case that you started to see more women come into gaming. So I'm just going to connect the two and say that, therefore, could there be more opportunities as women take to gaming more to build more for them?
So absolutely. I think the most important part is to understand the Indian gamer. And one of the key findings of the report, if you read that, is one person is not one persona. What I do with gaming is defined by the context and the occasion that I'm in. When I'm in a car commuting, I play a set of things, but at home, interestingly, in periods of lockdown and a time when the house was also isolated because of COVID, Ludo was something that we played because you could play as a family and distributed manner, and that's right. So it's a social thing you're creating. So under different genres, under different contexts and different occasions, you're operating very, very differently. So understanding the gaming consumer, what are they doing and when, is very important. And part of the insight was that women are beginning to take to games quite actively, albeit those are games which are less in terms of engagement intensity compared to some of the male archetypes, but they are definitely on the rise. So yes, to your point, there are opportunities, but I would just expand this. Understanding the Indian consumer becomes very, very important. And that's where some of the points that Rajan made very relevant. We are beginning to see significant rise of multiplayer behaviors. So gaming is a social thing. You're meeting friends, you're spending time. It's using gaming as a mechanism. So how do you build social interactivity? How do you play multiplayer features? So thinking through that, understanding and building it around will be important. I think there's a whole opportunity there, including localization and building around what games are going to be more popular with Indians. Ludo is a very interesting example, but there are many more out there that one can build around.
We are, as they say, at the inflection point. It's just starting out. Rajan talked about the Dream 11. He talked about MPL, and don't forget Nazara. That's also part of your report. It's taken 22 years to be where it is, to get someone like Rakesh Jhunjhunwala to invest and to have an IPO and then behave like an info edge for gaming and invest there. Clearly, very, very interesting times ahead of us. For now, I'll have to wrap up this conversation as we are out of time. We look forward to your next year's report to see how much closer we are to that $5 billion figure from the current 1.8.
Thank you, Nayantara.